I used to believe we had the perfect marriage. Emma and I were the couple people envied, the ones who had it all. She was brilliant, beautiful, and ambitious, climbing the corporate ladder with a confidence that had always captivated me. I was proud to call her my wife. We shared whispered secrets in the dark, laughter over cheap wine on Fridays, and promises of forever. But forever came crashing down in a single night. It started with a message from an unknown number. No words, just a video. At first, I hesitated. The rational part of me told me to delete it, that it was just another spam message or a prank. But something about it made my hands tremble as I tapped the screen. And then, my world ended. Emma, my wife, tangled in sheets that weren't ours, with a man I had seen before. Her boss. The video played on an endless loop in my mind, the sound of her breathless moans and whispered pleas turning my stomach inside out. She wasn't just cheating, she was devoted to him in a way I hadn't seen in years. I wanted to be sick. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears, my hands gripping the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. I replayed the last few months in my head, searching for the signs I had missed. The late nights at work. The extra care she had put into her appearance. The way she had started looking through me rather than at me. I had been a fool, but I wouldn't be a fool any longer. I took a deep breath and forced my mind to clear. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Emma was too smart, too calculating. She would lie, twist the truth, make me question my own sanity. No, I needed to play this right. I needed to set a trap. And when I was done, she wouldn't just lose me. She would lose everything. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the dim glow of my office, staring at the frozen image of Emma on my phone screen. My wife. My betrayer. Every second of that video was etched into my brain, her soft gasps, the way her fingers curled against his skin, the raw, unfiltered pleasure in her face. It wasn't just sex. It was passion. A passion I hadn't seen in years. And that was what gutted me the most. I should have confronted her then, and there shaken her awake, thrown my phone in her face, demanded answers. But that would have been reckless. And if Emma had taught me anything in our years together, it was that the most powerful moves were always the quiet ones. So, I swallowed my rage and played the part of the clueless husband. By the time she woke up the next morning, I was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee like it was just another ordinary day. She walked in, stretching lazily, wearing one of my shirts, her hair still tousled from sleep. "Morning," she murmured, pressing a kiss to my cheek. I fought the urge to flinch. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Busy day ahead?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "You have no idea. The board's being a nightmare, and Chris is pushing some new restructuring plan that's going to be a disaster." Chris. Her boss. The man she had spent last night screwing in a hotel room. I nodded, schooling my features into concern. "Sounds exhausting. Maybe we should do something this weekend, get away for a bit. Just us." She hesitated. It was so small, so quick, but I saw it. A flicker of guilt. Then she smiled. "That sounds perfect." Liar. She left for work soon after, her phone buzzing with messages before she even stepped out the door. I watched her go, sipping my coffee, my hands clenched so tight around the mug that my knuckles turned white. The rage was there, simmering beneath the surface. But I forced myself to breathe, to focus. I had work to do. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to ruin her. And to do that, I needed information. I spent the next few days playing my role to perfection. I kissed Emma goodbye in the mornings. I texted her sweet nothings in the afternoons. I listened to her vent about work over dinner, nodding along as she complained about her boss, the same man she was screwing behind my back. But beneath the surface, I was hunting. I needed leverage, something bigger than just a video of her cheating. If I exposed her now, she'd cry, she'd apologize, she'd say it was a mistake, a weak moment. No, Emma wasn't just having an affair. She was calculating. She had planned this. And if she had the audacity to throw away our marriage for this man, then there had to be more. And I was right. Through my business connections, I managed to get access to some internal financial records from Emma's company. At first, I was just looking for anything, incriminating emails, suspicious transactions, hidden accounts. I expected to find proof that Chris had given her a raise or some other disgusting reward for her loyalty. But what I found was so much better. Emma wasn't just covering for Chris. She was helping him hide money. Fraud. She had signed documents, authorized payments, shifted numbers around in ways that would mean nothing to an outsider. But I wasn't an outsider. I ran my own business, and I knew exactly what I was looking at. She had buried herself deeper than I ever could have imagined. And that's when I realized I didn't just have leverage. I had a weapon. I could have gone straight to the authorities right then, sent everything I found to the right people, and watched her entire world burn. But that wasn't enough. No, I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to watch it all crumble around her, slowly, painfully, the way she had made our marriage fall apart without me even realizing it. So I set my trap. The pieces were in place. The only thing left was to wait. I knew Emma. I knew how she operated, how she thought she was always the smartest person in the room. She'd gotten away with this affair because she was careful, covering her tracks, playing the devoted wife when she needed to. But she didn't realize something crucial. I could lie too. So, I kept playing my part. I kissed her when she came home, held her close at night, pretended nothing had changed. And in the meantime, I made sure her world was unraveling without her even realizing it. I started small, little things, like calling her office unexpectedly during the day, asking for her, just to hear the receptionist hesitate before saying, "She's in a meeting with Chris." Like making last-minute dinner plans to test her, plans she suddenly had to cancel because of work emergencies. Like subtly slipping into conversation. "You know, I was thinking about switching banks. Maybe consolidating our accounts. What do you think?" That one almost made her flinch. Almost. But Emma was good. She recovered fast, smiling sweetly. "You know I handle all that, babe. I've got it covered." "Yeah, I bet you do." But the real game began when I started leaving hints. One night, as we were curled up on the couch watching TV, I casually scrolled through my phone and muttered, "Weird. Someone sent me this anonymous email about some fraud case in the city." Emma barely reacted, didn't even look at me, just shrugged. "It's probably spam." "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice light. "Still, can you imagine getting caught up in something like that? Losing your job, maybe even going to jail." That time, I felt her shift slightly beside me. Good. That was the first drop of poison. The cracks were forming. The trick to dismantling someone's life wasn't to destroy it all at once. No, that would be too easy, too obvious. The real art was in making them feel unsafe, making them question their own reality, bit by bit, until their own mind became the cage they couldn't escape. And Emma? She was about to learn what it felt like to lose control. It started with the text message. I sent it from a burner phone, a simple message with no name, no details, just enough to light a spark of paranoia. "They know. Be careful." That night, I watched her. Every movement, every flicker of unease. She didn't say anything, didn't react right away. But I saw the way she glanced at her phone over and over again. The way her fingers twitched slightly against the wine glass she was holding. She was thinking. And then, the next morning, she made a mistake. She left her phone on the counter while she was in the shower. Normally, she kept it glued to her hand, locked away, never within reach. But today she slipped. And I was waiting. I picked it up, heart pounding, and swiped the screen. Locked, of course. But the notifications were still there. One name stood out. Chris. "Chris, did you see the message? Chris, do not call me today. I'll handle it. Chris, we need to be smart. No more mistakes." I nearly laughed. "No more mistakes? Emma, you're already drowning." I set the phone down exactly as she had left it and went back to making coffee, acting like nothing had happened. When she walked into the kitchen minutes later, I kissed her on the cheek like any other morning. She smiled, but her eyes weren't really here. They were somewhere else. Scrambling. She was afraid. And that was exactly where I wanted her. The fear was settling in. But I wasn't done yet. Fear was a funny thing. It made people reckless. And Emma? She was starting to unravel. It was small at first. Little things. She'd glance at her phone more often, her fingers tense around the screen. She was distracted during dinner, barely touching her food. When I kissed her goodbye in the morning, she hesitated for just a second before forcing a smile. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know how much I knew. That was the beauty of it. I wasn't just exposing her. I was controlling her. And then, I gave her another push. One evening, as she was getting ready for bed, I accidentally left my laptop open on the kitchen table. The screen? A news article about corporate fraud scandals. It wasn't blatant, it wasn't a direct accusation, but it was enough. Enough to make her stomach drop. Enough to make her wonder if I was onto her. Sure enough, that night, when she thought I was asleep, she slipped out of bed and tiptoed downstairs. I watched from the darkened hallway as she leaned over my laptop, scrolling through the article, reading every word like it might save her. I could almost hear her heart pounding. She stood there for minutes, just staring. And then, she grabbed her phone and disappeared into the bathroom to call him. The next morning, I checked her call history when she wasn't looking. Chris, 2:17 a.m. Just as I expected. She was running scared. Good. Because soon, she wouldn't have anywhere left to run. The trap was almost ready to spring. Emma was spiraling, and I was loving every second of it. She thought she was careful, thought she could control the damage. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't just watching. I was orchestrating every move she made, and she was playing right into my hands. The next stage of my plan required patience. Precision. I needed her to believe she still had time, that she could fix this. So I eased up. I stopped bringing up banks. I didn't leave suspicious news articles lying around. I didn't even mention the late nights or the distracted looks. Instead, I did something far more dangerous. I made her feel safe. I surprised her with flowers, booked us a weekend getaway, told her how much I loved her. And the best part? She wanted to believe it. Because deep down, Emma knew she was losing control. And that scared her more than anything. She clung to me, desperate to convince herself that everything was fine, that I was still the same oblivious husband who had adored her for years. But I wasn't. I was waiting for the kill. And then, I made my final move. I scheduled a meeting. A formal one. With the authorities. I handed over everything. The falsified documents, the financial discrepancies, every shady transfer Emma had approved to cover for Chris. And then, I did something even better. I made sure Emma got the tip-off. An anonymous email, sent straight to her inbox. Internal audit scheduled. You should prepare. I watched as she read it, her entire body tensing. I saw the way her breathing changed, the way her fingers clenched around her phone. She looked up at me from across the kitchen, her face pale. I need to go to the office, she murmured. I sipped my coffee, pretending to be confused. At this hour? She forced a smile. Yeah, just something urgent with HR. Liar. I watched her leave, knowing exactly where she was going. Straight to him. Straight into the final act of her downfall. Everything is in place. The fall is coming. Emma was predictable when she was under pressure. She didn't think. I had seen that in the past few weeks. When she panicked, she reacted instead of planning. And now, she was scrambling, running straight to Chris, hoping he'd have a way out. But there was no way out. Not this time. I tracked her through the app one had installed on her phone weeks ago. Her location? A high-end hotel downtown. Their hideout. I could picture it so clearly. Emma pacing the suite, her voice shaking as she whispered to Chris, trying to convince herself that everything wasn't falling apart, that I wasn't onto her, that the authorities weren't already moving in. I waited. 2 hours passed. Then, right on time, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. We need to talk. I smiled. Chris. I let him wait. I let both of them sweat. Then, finally, I answered. Chris, I said, my voice calm. What's wrong? You sound stressed. There was silence on the other end, then a sharp exhale. Cut the bullshit. I know you sent that email. I leaned back in my chair, completely at ease. What email? Another pause. Then, more urgently. Look, we can work this out. There's no need to involve outside people. Let's meet. Just us. I'll make it worth your while. I almost laughed. He thought this was a negotiation. I glanced at the clock. Any minute now. And then, the first news alert popped up on my screen. Breaking. CEO of Sterling Corp under investigation for financial misconduct. I refreshed the page. Authorities raid office of Sterling Corp executive. Allegations of fraud surface. I could only imagine what Chris's face looked like in that moment. He wasn't calling to negotiate. He was calling to beg. But I wasn't in the business of mercy. I hung up. And then, for the first time in weeks, I finally breathed. Emma and Chris's world was on fire. And I was the one who lit the match. Emma didn't come home that night. I wasn't surprised. She was too busy watching everything fall apart. The news spread fast. Fraud, financial misconduct, possible jail time. By morning, every major outlet was covering it. Chris had gone into hiding. Sterling Corp was in full-blown crisis mode, and employees were already jumping ship. And Emma? She had nowhere to go. She finally called me around noon. Her voice was shaky, on the verge of breaking. Hey, where are you? I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. Home. A pause. I'm coming back. We need to talk. I almost laughed at the audacity. Talk? Now she wanted to talk? I didn't respond right away, letting the silence stretch until I could hear her breathing harder. Then, I simply said, I'll be here, and hung up. 30 minutes later, she walked through the door. Disheveled, pale, scared. I stood in the kitchen, watching her like a predator watches prey. She set her bag down, forcing a weak smile. God, today has been insane. People are panicking. The company is. I slid a folder across the counter. She stopped, stared at it. What's this? She whispered. I crossed my arms. Your financial records. Your emails. Every single fraudulent document you signed. She didn't move, didn't blink, just froze. Finally, her lips parted, and her voice came out hoarse. You knew. I tilted my head. Of course I knew. A strangled sound escaped her throat. For how long? I smiled. Long enough to bury you. Her breath hitched. She shook her head, her eyes glistening. You set me up? I let that sink in. Let her feel the weight of those words. Then I said the only thing that mattered. No, Emma. You set yourself up. I just let the world see it. Checkmate. Emma stood there, her hands gripping the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I had never seen her like this before. Not confident, not in control, not untouchable, just afraid. And God, it was beautiful. Her voice was barely a whisper. You can't do this to me. I raised an eyebrow. Emma, I already did. She shook her head, her breath coming fast and uneven. No, you don't understand. If I go down for this, I lose everything. My career, my reputation. I cut her off with a cold laugh. Oh, you mean the things you traded our marriage for? Yeah, Emma, I know. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but what could she say? That she was sorry? That it was a mistake? No, she wasn't sorry. She was just sorry she got caught. And I wasn't done. I slid another folder across the counter. Her divorce papers. She flinched like I had physically hit her. She swallowed hard, her voice cracking. You planned this. I met her eyes without hesitation. From the moment I got that video, she trembled, reaching for the papers with shaking fingers, flipping through the pages. I had made everything airtight. No assets, no settlement, no way to drag me down with her. Her breath hitched as she saw the final clause. The one that mattered most. Infidelity clause. If she signed, she walked away with nothing. No house. No savings. Just the ashes of the life she set on fire. Her gaze snapped up, desperate now. Please, we can fix this. You and me. We were. I stepped back. No, Emma. We were nothing. Not after what you did. Tears spilled over, her mask finally shattering. I don't want to lose you. She didn't mean that. She meant she didn't want to lose what I provided, what I built, what she thought would always be there. But I wasn't hers anymore. And she was finally realizing it. I picked up a pen and placed it beside the papers. Signed them. She stared at it like it was a loaded gun. Like signing her name would make everything real. She opened her mouth, one last plea. One last attempt to manipulate me. I didn't give her the chance. Sign them, I repeated, my voice sharp. Or stay and watch what happens when the authorities start really digging. Her face paled. And then? She picked up the pen. And with trembling hands, she signed her name. It was over. But I wasn't finished just yet. Emma sat there, staring at the ink drying on the divorce papers like she could somehow undo it. Like she could wish it all away. But reality had finally caught up to her. She had nothing left. No husband. No home. No money. No career. Just ruins. And I was free. I took the papers, neatly stacked them, and slid them into a folder. It was done. Official. Irreversible. Emma wiped at her eyes with shaking fingers, but the tears kept falling. What am I supposed to do now? I tilted my head, pretending to think. Well, your boss is on his way to prison. Your company is in free fall. You could try to find another job, but, well, I don't think corporate fraud looks too good on a resume. Her jaw trembled. Please. That single word. Pathetic. I had spent years worshiping this woman, loving her, fighting for her. And now, she was just a wreckage of her own making. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I didn't need to hear another excuse. Another lie. But before I left, I paused. Turned back one last time. And I delivered the final blow. You know, I said casually, I ran into someone the other day. A lawyer. Her eyes flickered with confusion, panic. WHY? I smirked. Oh, not for me. For Chris's wife. The color drained from her face. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice to a whisper. She knows everything, Emma. She's going after him for everything he has. And I made sure she knows exactly who helped him. She gasped. Actually gasped. I had one last gift for Emma. Because now, she wasn't just alone. She was alone and being hunted. I left her sitting there shaking, crying, completely ruined. I stepped outside, took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, I felt something incredible. Peace. Emma had spent years tearing me down. Now, she was the one left in the dirt. I didn't look back. Not once. As I walked out of that house, the house we had built together, the one she had tainted with her betrayal, I felt nothing but lightness. No more lies. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more Emma. Just me. Free. The divorce was finalized within a month. She didn't fight it. She couldn't. Not with everything I had on her. I heard whispers of what happened to her after. She lost her job, of course. No company wanted to touch her after the fraud scandal. She tried to run, but there was nowhere to hide. Chris? He was completely ruined. His wife took everything, his assets, his dignity, his name. And Emma? She faded into nothing. The last time I saw her, it was by accident. I was in the city, heading into a high-end restaurant for a business dinner, when I noticed her across the street. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes anymore. She wasn't walking with confidence, head high, like she used to. No, she was waitressing at some rundown diner. Her hair was pulled back, her uniform wrinkled. She was tired, beaten down, nothing like the woman I used to know. For a moment, she looked up and saw me through the window. Our eyes met, and I saw it. The recognition, the shame, the realization that she had traded everything and ended up with nothing. She opened her mouth, like she wanted to say something, but I just smiled. Then I turned and walked away. For good. Emma destroyed our marriage. I just made sure she paid the price. And now, I was finally free. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.